These are 5 things that quietly fade away after you retire. And I learned a couple of these the hard way. And I don't want you to go through that same confusion, that same, wait, why didn't anyone tell me this kind of moment? Because when you picture retirement, you think about freedom, right? No alarm clocks, no meetings, no stress. And yes, that part is real, but there are some things that slowly go quiet in your life. And if you're not ready for it, it can feel unsettling. So let's jump in and I'll share my list. The first one is your daily structure, your routine, your rhythm. You know, when you're working, whether you love your job or not, your day has a shape. You wake up at a certain time, you have somewhere to be, people expect you, there's a flow. Even your weekends feel earned, there's contrast. And then retirement comes, and all of a sudden, nobody needs you at 9 a.m. There's no urgency, no deadlines. And at first, that feels amazing. You wake up and think, wow, I can do whatever I want today. But then a week goes by, maybe 2, and you start to realize something's missing. Not the stress, not the pressure, but the structure. The sense that your day has purpose built into it. I remember talking to someone who retired after 35 years in the same industry. Highly disciplined guy, always on time, always organized. And about 3 months into retirement, he told me, I don't know what day it is anymore. And he laughed when he said it, but there was something behind that laugh. Because when structure disappears, it's easy for days to blur together. And when days blur together, it can quietly affect your sense of purpose. Now, I'm not saying you need to rebuild a strict schedule like you had at work, not at all, but you do need some kind of rhythm. Something that gives your day a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whether that's morning walks, volunteering, working on projects, spending time with family. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's intentional. Because without that, retirement can feel less like freedom and more like drifting. Okay, let's keep going. The second thing that goes quiet after you retire is the recognition, the validation, the feeling of being needed. When you're working, even if you don't think about it, you're constantly getting feedback. Maybe it's a paycheck. Maybe it's a good job from your boss. Maybe it's just knowing that your role matters, that people rely on you. And then, one day, that just stops. No more performance reviews, no more promotions, no more "we couldn't have done this without you." And again, at first, that might feel like relief. No pressure, no expectations. But over time, something subtle happens. You start to miss being part of something bigger. You start to miss the feeling that what you do matters to other people in a structured way. I've seen this especially with people who had leadership roles. They go from being decision makers, from being the person others turn to suddenly having a lot more silence around them. And that silence can be uncomfortable if you're not prepared for it. So what do you do with that? Well, you don't wait for recognition to come to you anymore. You create environments where it naturally exists. That could be mentoring someone, volunteering, being involved in your community, even helping family members in meaningful ways. Because the truth is, the need to feel useful doesn't retire when you do. All right, the third thing that goes quiet, and this one surprises a lot of people, is your social circle. Now, I'm not saying your friends disappear, but your interactions change. When you're working, you have built-in social contact. You see coworkers regularly. You have conversations, even small ones, the kind that fill your day without you even noticing. After retirement, those daily interactions fade, and unless you're intentional, your world can get smaller without you realizing it. I remember someone telling me, I used to talk to 15 people a day without trying. Now I have to plan just to talk to one. And that shift can feel bigger than you expect. Because it's not just about conversation, it's about connection. It's about feeling part of a community, even in small ways. And if you don't replace that, if you don't actively create new ways to connect, you can start to feel isolated, even if you're not alone. So this is one where you have to be proactive. You have to reach out, join groups, stay involved, make plans. Because the days of social interaction just happening are mostly behind you. And that's not a bad thing, it just requires awareness. Now, the fourth thing that goes quiet after you retire is your income growth, your earning momentum. When you're working, there's always the possibility of more. Raises, bonuses, promotions, side opportunities. Even if it's small, there's a sense that your income can increase over time. Once you retire, that dynamic shifts completely. You're no longer focused on earning more, you're focused on managing what you have, preserving it, making it last. And that mental shift is bigger than most people expect. Because when income growth stops, every financial decision starts to feel a little heavier. There's no, "I'll just make more next year" safety net. It becomes about balance, sustainability. I've seen people struggle with this, not because they didn't have enough, but because they hadn't adjusted their mindset. They were still thinking like earners when they needed to start thinking like stewards. And that doesn't mean you can't have income in retirement. Some people do. Part-time work, consulting, small businesses. But the overall trajectory changes. The focus shifts. So, being aware of that early and planning for it makes a huge difference in how comfortable you feel. All right, now the fifth one, and this one is a little more subtle, is the quieting of future milestones. When you're in your career, there's always something ahead. The next promotion, the next project, the next big goal. Your timeline is filled with markers, things you're working towards. Retirement removes a lot of those built-in milestones. And without them, time can feel different. Faster in some ways, but also less defined. You might find yourself asking, what am I working towards now? And that's not a bad question, but it's one you need to answer intentionally. Because if you don't create new milestones, new goals, new things to look forward to, life can start to feel a little flat. Not bad, just quieter than you expected. So, maybe your milestones become travel plans, personal projects, learning something new, spending time with family in meaningful ways. The key is to replace those external milestones with internal ones, things that matter to you now. Because retirement isn't the end of the road, it's just a different kind of journey. Now, I'm going to pause right here because in the next part, I want to go even deeper into how these changes actually affect your day-to-day life, and more importantly, how to handle them in a way that makes retirement feel full, not empty.
Because knowing that these things go quiet is one thing, but what really matters is what you do next. This is where retirement either becomes something incredibly fulfilling or something that feels a little emptier than you expected. And I want to help you land on the right side of that. So the first thing I want to talk about is what happens emotionally when all of this starts to settle in. Because here's the truth. Retirement isn't just a financial transition, it's an identity shift. For decades, whether you realize it or not, part of who you are has been tied to what you do. You meet someone, and one of the first questions is, what do you do? And you have an answer, a clear one. And then retirement comes, and that answer disappears. Now, you might replace it with, I'm retired, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't quite carry the same weight, does it? It doesn't tell a story in the same way. And that can feel a little strange at first. I remember someone telling me, I spent 40 years becoming someone, and now I'm not sure who that someone is anymore. And again, they said it with a smile, but there was something deeper there. Because when your identity has been anchored to your career, retirement can feel like that anchor's been lifted. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually an opportunity, but only if you see it that way. This is your chance to redefine yourself on your terms, not based on a job title, not based on a company, but based on what actually matters to you. Maybe you become the person who mentors others. Maybe you become the person who finally dives into passions you never had time for. Maybe you become more present with family, more involved in your community. But that doesn't happen automatically. You have to choose it. Because if you don't actively shape your new identity, retirement can start to feel like a question mark instead of a new chapter. Now, the next thing that tends to happen, and this catches a lot of people off guard, is the relationship shift. When you retire, your relationships change, even the good ones. If you're married or living with someone, all of a sudden you're spending a lot more time together. And that sounds great, and it is, but it's also an adjustment. You go from having separate routines, separate spaces, separate rhythms, to suddenly sharing a lot more of your day. And if you don't talk about that, if you don't set expectations, little things can start to build up. I've seen couples where one person retires and the other doesn't, and there's this mismatch in lifestyle. One person is in free time mode, and the other is still in work mode. And that can create tension if it's not handled thoughtfully. Or both people retire, and they realize they've never actually spent this much continuous time together before. So the key here is communication.
You don't want to just assume everything will fall into place. Talk about how you want your days to look. Talk about space, independence, shared activities. Because retirement doesn't just change your schedule, it changes your dynamic. All right, now another big one, and this ties back to what we talked about earlier, is how you spend your time. Because here's something I've noticed again and again. If you don't plan your time will disappear. And not in a dramatic way, just in small, quiet ways. A little more TV here, a little more scrolling there, a little more I'll do it tomorrow. And before you know it, weeks go by, and you're not quite sure what you did with them. Now, there's nothing wrong with relaxing. You've earned that. But there's a difference between intentional rest and unintentional drift. The people who thrive in retirement are the ones who treat their time as something valuable, something worth designing. They don't overpack their schedule, but they also don't leave it completely empty. They have things they look forward to, things they care about, things that give their days a little bit of energy. And it doesn't have to be big. It could be as simple as a morning routine you enjoy, a weekly meetup, a project you chip away at, learning something new. What matters is that you're engaged, because engagement is what keeps retirement feeling alive. Now, let me share something else, and this one is a bit of a mindset shift. A lot of people go into retirement thinking, I finally made it, now I can stop. And in some ways, that's true. You can step away from the grind, you can slow down, but the idea of completely stopping, that's where things can get tricky. Because humans are not wired to do nothing. We're wired to grow, to contribute, to engage. And when that stops entirely, it doesn't feel like freedom for very long. So instead of thinking about retirement as stopping, think about it as redirecting. You're not done. You're just choosing where your energy goes now. And that's a powerful shift, because it puts you back in control. Now, I want to touch on one more thing before we wrap this up, and that's the importance of staying mentally and physically active. This isn't about being extreme. It's not about turning your life into some intense routine. It's about staying in motion in a way that feels sustainable. Go for walks, stay curious, challenge your mind, have conversations, try new things. Because when things go quiet around you, you don't want everything inside you to go quiet too. You want to keep that sense of momentum, that sense of being alive and engaged. And it doesn't take much, just consistency. So when you put all of this together, yes, there are things that go quiet after you retire. Your structure, your recognition, your social rhythm, your income growth, your built-in milestones. But that doesn't mean your life gets smaller. If anything, it can get bigger, more intentional, more aligned, more meaningful. But only if you step into it that way. Because retirement doesn't automatically create a great life. It gives you the space to build one, and that's the difference. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Don't just retire from something, retire to something. Something that pulls you forward, that gives your days energy, that makes you excited to wake up without an alarm. Because that's when retirement really starts to feel like what you hoped it would be. Now, if you enjoyed this one, there's another video right here that I think you're really going to like. It's one that goes even deeper into how people can make their money last and actually enjoy retirement without constant worry. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next one.